The Pittsburgh Pirates had a terrible April, and before we get too far into May, it's time to talk all about it. Where it's headed and off ramps they could take. That's next on a live episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a special live Locked On Pirates. I'm Gary Morgan. You can follow me at GaryMo2007 on X, or you can find me on Facebook, Instagram. Check it out. Follow the Locked On accounts wherever. And I could spend a bunch of time talking about last night's game, or even the one they'll play this afternoon if weather permits. But instead, I think every month we, meaning me and all you, need to take a look at what we've seen and really break it down. Let's go deeper than just pretending firing someone or DFAing a player will produce the massive change that's needed. We probably need that too, but alone, it's not going to get the job done. It's been bad. Okay, see you next month. I mean, you know me better than that, right? Already. I haven't been here that long, but I'm sure you already know me better than that. Listen, I know it's been a terrible start. Just like I knew the 20-8 start back in 2023 was by all conceivable ways to paint the picture a legitimately great start. Back then, I remember doing math showing exactly how bad this team would have to be to fall all the way to an under 500 finish. That answer was under 10% chance, by the way. And we all know how that finished. 76 wins. Had you bet on that, you probably have an adrenaline junkie problem, but you'd have won a pretty penny. Now, I look at this 12-20 start, and keep in mind, I did all these stats yesterday before the game, and just for consistency's sake, that's where we're going to leave it. I'm not going to update them all by one day because I don't think it changes the point. And this is really about April, not what's happened in May. I look at this 12-20 start, and I see they have to win about 58% of their remaining games to finish 500 or better. Is it over? Well, it's just as decided as that 20-8 start was to being a playoff lock. Does that mean I see it happening? No, absolutely not. It's impossible to see that as we sit here right now looking at what this team currently is. I could play the what-if game if you like. Say they reel off like 8 to 10 in a row. Well, the math significantly changes, and from that point forward, you'd be asking for more of a 500 ball play instead of almost 60%. The thing is, you would have very much so achieved it the same way as you would if you won 7 out of 10 for 4 or 5 weeks. It's the exact same goal, and you change the math either way. You just never get the instant gratification of that number looking achievable. It's always going to stay up at that 60% mark unless you do some kind of winning streak. The issue is it's impossible to look at this team and see it. So here's what I want to do today. I want to look at what they have. I want to look at what they can change internally. And I want to see if I can somehow see enough positive change to get better results by May or in May. And we're going to have to start with the basics, the offense, right? It's been brutal. We all know it's been brutal. Let's go through some of these numbers because to me, we're not necessarily seeing the picture the right way. And what I mean by that is, as brutal as this start is, there's already been a little bit of a correction in some of the offensive numbers. And I think it makes it really key to look at it in this fashion. It pulls out the numbers and it makes you understand that the pitching is just as responsible. And I think it's hard to see when you're watching this game on a daily basis. As we've watched them play, they started out so badly offensively that they needed to get better just to get to like the bottom of the barrel. We're talking like they were hanging on by their fingernails at the very bottom of the league at the very beginning. Overall, here's where their offense looked like as of yesterday morning. 26th in team batting average at 224. 28th in home runs with 24. 23rd in hits with 238. 7th in strikeouts with 276. 7th in this case is not good. That means they have the 7th worst strikeout figure offensively. And 27th in OPS with 642. I got to be honest. 642 is a lot higher than I thought their OPS was, like before I started looking into this. Now, here's something interesting, though. Let's take those same sets of stats and let's separate it out. Let's look at the last half of April. So the last 15 days in April, the offense changed a little bit. They were 11th in team batting average at 266. So the overall number's terrible at 224, and that encompasses this last half of April. But think about how much better they had to be in the second half of April in order to climb a little bit. 20th in home runs with 11. So 11 of their 24 home runs have come in the second half of this whole thing. 14th in hits with 110. 19th in strikeouts with 94. So they've definitely significantly cut back on those. 13th in OPS with a 731 mark. That's all in the second half of April. If you think about those jumps, it's pretty provable that the offense from the first half of April to the second half of April, I'm not saying it's a world beater, but I'm saying they stopped being the entire cause for loss that first half and turned into more of a below average offense. But they probably are doing enough to win if the pitching is as excellent as we believed it to be going into this, right? I don't look at that and think, oh, that's great. I just think it's maybe a little better than I thought it was on the offensive side, because that's still taking into account playing guys every day like Adam Frazier and Tommy Pham and Jared Triolo and all the other guys that just haven't gotten anything done offensively. It's from a very down Brian Reynolds. It's from a very hot O'Neal Cruz, if you want to be fair. A lot of this last half of April numbers that I'm talking about, O'Neal Cruz was hotter than the fires of hell. So you factor all that in. IKF hitting really well. Andrew McCutchen was hitting really well. Brian Reynolds did not. But that second half, all of that stuff gets factored in. And all that stuff didn't exist in the first half. So you can honestly say the offense has not done its part, but we expected them to be a mediocre offense. I think right now they're a little bit under that mediocre offense. So how can they fix it? And I don't mean for the whole season, and I don't mean for like the trades they should make or the things they should have done in the offseason. We are where we are. So let's talk about what's actually going to improve as we enter May. That's where we're going to pick up when we come back. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of the console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your, or I guess your kids' games wherever you plug in. I like to take it in hotels when I travel for work. I think it's much more portable, a lot of fun to have. I like to wind down playing some video games at night. It's not like you can ship a console, and all the handheld options out there, they don't cut it. So I think it's a great option. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second generation, and Fire TV Cube second generation. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates, everybody. So those numbers, I talk about those numbers for one simple reason. This team hit like complete and utter trash for the first half of April, and after that, it's been largely league average. The issue is that second half of April is what we expected as the low water mark, not the upside of a huge down. Even so, improvement is largely with no injection of any upgrades. This team has really done nothing to make it improve. The players have just played a little better. How about if we go positional OPS and rank them against the league? Let's look at it even in another different way. For DH, 10th with a 766 OPS. Right field, 26th with a 615 OPS. Center field, second with an 893. Left field, 30th with a 387 OPS. Third base, 19th with a 609. Shortstop, 23rd with a 606. Second base, 26th with a 565. First base, 21st with a 643. And catcher, 15th with a 729. Now, those are positional numbers. In other words, first base shouldn't make you pound your fist over Emmanuel Valdez, who, by the way, has a 758 OPS. And like I just said, the first base numbers overall are 643. So it should make you think about Andy Rodriguez, who was at 504 and played an awful lot before he got injured. Right field is indicative of Reynolds, but he also was DH for quite some time, which makes that number not reflect what Kutch has done either. Feel me? It kind of changes everything a little bit when you think about it like that. Just what they've trotted out at these positions, that's what they've produced. 9 positions, 2 top 10 positional performances. That's from center field, largely O'Neal Cruz, and DH, largely Kutch, a little bit of Brian Reynolds. They will get some help back offensively, and some of it we have actual MLB samples for, one of which is Spencer Horwitz, who last year posted an OPS of 790. That would place him 9th in MLB if he were to be capable of reproducing it. So that would improve that first base number from 21st and a 643 OPS all the way up to 790, at least if he's going to be a platoon player against right-handed pitching. You would think you're going to get that kind of figure, which is a lot better than what they've been getting. And I'm not a person that thinks Valdez has done horribly. Nick Gonzalez had an OPS of 709 last year. So again, if he is capable of replicating that, it would be good for 14th in baseball. That won't raise their overall profile as a team all that dramatically, but it would take 2 of their worst positions and strengthen them significantly. I won't guess about other rookies or prospects here other than to say they have a few, and we'll very likely see them come up here and change the chemistry as the season plays out. That's the offense. Long story short, they were god-awful, rebounded to league average, and have a short-term chance to return a couple players and maybe move up a spot or 2 amongst the league. That's bad. And they were stubborn, I think, most of this first month with basically avoiding having a consistent lineup, not playing their best players every day. They did have some curveballs thrown at them. The Brian Reynolds sort of kind of injury where he could still hit but couldn't play the field really screwed them out of an opportunity to have Andrew McCutchen play a lot more. But let's go back in time a little bit, because until Andrew McCutchen said something about not playing a lot, they weren't playing him most of the time anyway. They were playing him every other day, it felt like, for the longest time. So would they have ever gotten to the point where they were playing him for the most part every day if it weren't for that injury and him saying something because he's frustrated? I don't know. Sometimes things happen for a reason, right? They've been extremely stubborn about Tommy Pham. And I don't know that I can sit here and tell you they have a better option. What do you want me to tell you? They should have put Jack Sawinski out there the whole time. I could argue there's more of an upside there if he actually hits. And I can also argue he won't hit much worse than Tommy Pham has. But there's a reason he got sent to the minors. He can't hit up here either. It hasn't anyway in quite some time. They've got some guys that I think they could call on. We saw they called up Liover Peguero, but they didn't use him. I think they have to have him here as long as IKF is not feeling right. But because they have to have a couple people that can play shortstop. But Liover Peguero is a guy that he's at least got some pop, and this lineup doesn't have any. Even those numbers that I read where I compared, the home run numbers didn't improve. Not all that much. So, in fact, I think they kind of went down a little bit. Because Oneil Cruz was about the only one hitting them. So, I think you're going to have to look to the minors for some of these guys. Unfortunately, a lot of them haven't really looked like they have to be called up. Like somebody that's going to get a lot of mention is Solak. He's leading the Eastern League, and the International League in hitting, almost hitting 400. He's been crazy good. He's got some major league experience. Is he going to come up here and save everything? I doubt it. He never has. I mean, he's been on some other teams and gotten some opportunity, but for the most part, he gets sussed out and people figure out what he is. And, he's a Jake Lamb type. He comes up here and he does what he's going to do. That said, this team can't afford to pretend they don't need lightning in a bottle. And that's a guy that can play a little bit of the outfield, and he can fill in a spot. Take the hot hand. They seem to be wanting to give Alexander Canario a little bit more of a run. To be fair, if you're going to ultimately end up DFAing him because he doesn't have any options, don't you kind of owe it to the guy to give him 3, 4, 5 games in a row and see what he has? When you're playing a guy like that who strikes out a lot to begin with, when you're playing a guy like that once a week, what do you expect to get out of him? When do you expect to see any improvement? Really and truly. You're not facing any pitching. You're getting called into these games and playing them. You've got 3 or 4 opportunities, usually 3 if you're batting at the lower part of the lineup with this team, because they're not going to get through a lineup 5 or 6 times most often. Well, if Alexander Canario is hitting 7th, 8th, or 9th once a week, how do you expect him to ever get anything going? I'm not saying he will. Trust me, I don't think he's some kind of star waiting to hatch. I think there's a better chance of him running into one than there is Tommy Pham. I think he can play defense just about as good as Tommy Pham. It's negligible, at least to the point where I don't care. If the guy hits 200, he's doing better than Tommy Pham. Let him try. And if that doesn't work, put Gorski out there. You're going to run out of reasons to use Gorski, and you haven't been using him much since you came up in the first place. 13 at bats, he's been up here over a week. He has 1 home run and 1 single. People want to tell me about his 180-something average, and I'm like, he's played 3 games. What do you want? What do you expect out of these kids? how do you expect to know if you don't play them? You can't just flood the team with them. You've got actual contracts for people, and you're not looking to just throw those away. But Tommy Pham is a guy that I think you've probably seen enough of. That's a veteran you could probably let go of. Just clear up the space and use it. If you got these kids up here, they need to play. And if you have any hope of this offense improving quickly, it's going to have to come from some of those guys I said were coming from injury, or you're going to have to try something like a Nick Solak, or you're going to have to hope that Nick York takes a real jump and gets up here, or Billy Cook starts looking something resembling what he did last year, because so far, not so much. It's got to come from the minors because they're not going to acquire it, and it's too early to even be trying, really. We're going to take another quick break here, and I mean real quick, and then we're going to come back and start talking about the vaunted pitching. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. How about that vaunted pitching? If the Pirates were going to do anything this year, it was going to be driven by the starting pitching. Because be real, league average offense was the expectation. Given what they actually brought in, or more aptly didn't, this offseason, this is what we all expected. Every single one of us thought this offense is going to struggle to be average. None of us saw the power. We all had concerns about it. And the only thing we could hang our hats on was that this pitching was going to be otherworldly. Well, it hasn't been. And when I read these numbers, I'm just going to tell you, this is more than a Jared Jones injury away from being where we really need it to be. Let's start with the starters. 20th in ERA with a 4.32 mark. 7th in innings pitched with 173. 7th in home runs with 17. In this case, that's good. 25th in runs with 90. And 24th in earned runs with 83. So I glean a few things from this. One, the ERA is anything but elite. They're throwing more innings than most teams, the starters are at least. And they're pretty good at keeping the ball in the ballpark. And as much as it's looked like the defense was killing them, they weren't nearly as nicked by it as I assumed, with only 7 runs not earned given up. And yes, I'm aware some bad plays don't get called errors. I've been watching the game for a minute too. But still, for the most part, you would think that an error is assigned when it's really, really on the defense with no doubt, right? Losing Jones hurt, but not so much that these numbers are acceptable for a unit that was supposed to be the main reason for winning and deep enough to sustain through injury. That was another big reason we were so excited about it. The bullpen evolves so much via moving parts. It's really hard to judge in the same fashion that I just did starting pitching. For instance, if I simply remove Holderman and Bednar, they're a top 10 unit. If I add them back in, bottom 10. But the moving parts around them have been changed 7 or 8 times already. So, I mean, they rank 18th for ERA at 4.09, which, believe it or not, is second best in the NL Central to the Reds, who have a 3.41 mark. And they just sent their closer, Alexis Diaz, to the minors for a lot of the same issues David Bednar had. They'll get help here too. Moretta's going to be returning, Dowry Moretta. It looks like David Bednar is pretty resurgent. He really looks a lot more like himself. They still have shaky spots. Moving Majinski back to the pen will help a great deal, I think. And I do believe we'll see that this month. But the pitching was supposed to be the strength of this team. And it certainly hasn't been. It certainly hasn't been. Paul Skeens included. And his 2.75 ERA is nothing to worry about. He's still a really good pitcher. He's still the ace. He's still the best pitcher we have. He's still going to win, or at least give you a chance to win most nights that he pitches. I'm not concerned about him in the least, really. I am concerned about Mitch Keller. Mitch Keller needs to be a very solid number 2, and he has not been. In fact, he's been a lot more like number 2 so far. He's had a couple good outings, but a couple real stinkers in there too. You need Mitch Keller to be a guy that can lock down the better offenses in the league. This team is just not beat to out offense other people. You have got to get that good starting pitching, and then you've got to turn it over to a bullpen that's going to make it count. So is the season over? Well, obviously not. Is the dream of playoff season over? I mean, if you dared to dream it in the first place, I'd say it very likely is. Any of you that watched the NL Central preview show know that I did not predict playoffs. I think I had them at 83 wins, which sounds silly enough. So I'm glad I didn't go the extra mile. 500 is probably the most attainable goal left for this club, with a chance to look like a much better team as the season plays out, with help coming from the minors and a team waving goodbye to awful veteran additions. This team has some things I feel are worth watching. If you're asking me why I stay plugged in, aside from, my job, O'Neal Cruz is breaking out and starting to catch on in center field. And I know he just made a mistake last night, but it was a diving attempt to make a catch when he knew he was being backed up by Brian Reynolds, and that play really should have ended as a double. It would have ended as a single, but I still think both of those runs probably score. So I'm not as concerned about him attempting to make a spectacular catch as I am making bad decisions or bad breaks on balls. I think I'm seeing a lot of that stuff get cleaned up with him. And at the plate, he's been really good. Nobody wants to pitch to him, and he makes them pay when they don't. That's all you can ask of him right now. The starting rotation developing throughout 2025 into something less conceptual in 2026. The Pirates, in my estimation, need to force themselves to get the growing pains over with a few guys this year, and it might not add up to winning now. This start makes it even less hard to achieve, really, because there's no reason to not get like Bubba Chandler up here, and I do believe we'll see that within the next couple weeks. Or Thomas Harrington, or Mike Burrows, or Braxton Ashcraft, whoever. Get them up here, get their sea legs under them so that we enter 2026 knowing a little bit better what we have, as opposed to hoping all those names pan out. Because that's not how baseball works. I'm not so sure Ben Cherington and Derek Shelton know that's how it works, but I'm also hoping at least one of them won't be here next year. So can they finally find traction with Nick Gonzalez, Henry Davis, Leover Peguero, Andy Rodriguez, Nick York, Billy Cook types? If you ask me, they have to have a win or two in here minimally. Or we're going to be in the exact same position come this offseason, relying on this team to go get what is missing. Do they make a coaching change? The ultimate question being answered there is, do they think the players are capable but not being used properly or trained properly or motivated properly? The hitch here is you don't have to know the answer. You just have to be frustrated enough to do it and find out. And I do believe we're getting close to that. This team has to avoid long losing streaks, and early on they have. Unfortunately, they've also neglected to win 3 straight at any point. Can we go streaking? If we can't, you have the answer to the headline of this entire thing. It will have to wake up Bob at some point. I'm not trying to convince you this thing is headed in the right direction, but I am saying they've already flipped the switch a bit from how they started to now. Overall, this team has to take a jump. And that won't come playing Adam Frazier, IKF, Tommy Pham, and Manuel Valdez 5 or 6 games a week. There isn't a jump in there. Just league average if they're lucky. I think we need to do better than that. I think they can do better than that. But it's going to take a little bit of urgency from people that haven't shown any. That's really the biggest problem I see with the team is they're so risk averse in every single aspect of baseball, from onboarding kids and letting it play out a little bit. You have to suffer sometimes with kids in order to find out what they are. I would just invite you all to go back and look at the early season numbers from Jackson Churios last year in Milwaukee. After they signed him to that big 10-year extension before he even debuted because they knew he was going to be a stud, they brought him up. He struggled, and I mean struggled, for the first 3 or 4 months on a team that thought they were a playoff team. But they knew they had to be patient with that kid, not just because they signed him, because they knew they needed him to make this team and make this team better and become a star on this team. And they fought through it, and look at him now. He's one of the better players in the league already. They gave William Contreras a chance and watched him struggle for a little while until he finally caught traction. Now he's one of the better catchers in the league. Good teams know when it's worth giving the time. Bad teams give the time to the wrong players and never, ever try to see what they can get out of their own. All in all, a top-level change has to come to this team. I do believe that. But we're just talking about getting into May and some things that can improve. They can turn things around a little bit. If the offense stays right where it is, which again is not good, but it's a little bit above league average, and the pitching returns to where we hoped it would, or gets an infusion like Bubba Chandler into it, it changes things drastically for this team. They've got to get on the same page and have the pitching and the offense going at the same time. The schedule's not going to get any easier. And guess what? When you have the second worst record in baseball, the schedule is always going to look hard. Let's see what May brings. Thanks for joining me on a live episode. This was a lot of fun, and I will try to do these more often. Every month, we're definitely going to do a report card type episode because, to me, the best way to see the team evolve is to look at it month to month and really see what's changing as the course of time goes. Thank you for making Locked On Pirates your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.